The knife came wrapped in silk, served with Dom Perignon, and a smile that could sell ice to an Eskimo. Lila lifted her glass, and I knew my marriage was over before she even opened her mouth. Jason makes real money, Ethan. You'll be fine. I stared across the candlelit table at the woman I'd loved for 8 years, watching her deliver my death sentence with the same casual elegance she used to order wine. The restaurant hummed around us, crystal glasses clinking, silverware scraping bone china, the soft murmur of other people's happiness. "If you're sure," I said, my voice steady as granite. No scene. No protest. I swallowed it whole like bad medicine, feeling it burn all the way down. My phone buzzed against the table. Board options review. Carr. Tomorrow 9 a.m. Jason Carr. The swagger king himself. The man who'd waltzed into our company 6 months ago with his Italian shoes and Swiss watch, throwing around investor speak like confetti at a wedding. The same man who was apparently throwing around my wife. Lila's champagne caught the light as she raised it higher. "I'm moving out this weekend. Jason's place overlooks the harbor." Of course it did. Jason's place probably overlooked heaven itself, if you believed his pitch decks. "I'll have my lawyer contact yours about the papers," she continued, as if discussing the weather. I nodded, studying her face in the restaurant's golden glow. 8 years of marriage, and she was dismantling it with corporate efficiency. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd taught her that language. "One question," I said, signing the check with steady hands. "How long? Does it matter?" "Professional curiosity," she laughed, the sound like breaking glass. 3 months. Maybe 4. Right around the time Jason signed his investor agreement. Interesting timing. Outside, the October air bit at my skin as I waited for my cab. Lila climbed into Jason's Maserati, her red dress pooling around her like spilled wine. Through the windshield, I caught her leaning over to kiss him, the same kiss she'd given me on our wedding day. The cab pulled up, and I slid into the back seat. As we pulled away from the restaurant, I opened my secure phone and scrolled to a document I'd buried deep in Jason's investor paperwork. Conduct and Conflict of Interest Rider, Addendum C. Specifically Section 12. Any undisclosed personal or financial consideration between investor and key personnel constitutes material breach of fiduciary duty and ethical standards. My fingers found the clause I'd insisted on during negotiations. Jason's counsel had skimmed right over it, too busy counting zeros to read the fine print. Egregious breach results in immediate termination of all agreements, forfeiture of equity positions, and full clawback of invested capital. I closed the phone and watched the city lights blur past. Lila thought she was trading up. What she didn't realize was that Jason's money came from my company, and I'd just been handed the key to his kingdom. Tomorrow's board meeting was going to be very interesting. 6 months earlier, Jason Carr had strutted into our boardroom like he owned the place, which, in a way, he soon would, at least 15% of it. I'd done my homework on Mr. Carr. Graduated from Wharton, founded 2 successful hedge funds, sold one to Goldman for 8 figures. The man had credentials that gleamed like his Rolex. But credentials and character aren't the same thing. "Ethan Cole," I'd said, extending my hand. "COO, I'll be handling the operational side of your integration. Jason Carr, and I'll be handling the profitable side." His handshake was firm, his smile predatory. Behind him, his legal counsel, a sharp woman in her 50s, arranged documents with military precision. "Standard investor agreement," she'd said, sliding the contract across mahogany. "My client maintains right of first refusal on any major operational changes, plus quarterly review of all vendor relationships." I'd nodded, making notes. "Of course, we'll need our own riders for compliance. Standard stuff. Conduct policies, conflict of interest disclosures, the usual corporate housekeeping." Jason barely glanced at the additional pages as he signed. His counsel flipped through them quickly, more focused on the equity percentages than the behavioral clauses. "Bit excessive on the ethics language," she'd murmured to me privately. "Belt and suspenders," I'd replied. "He won't need them if he plays straight, and if he doesn't, then we own him." The memory felt prophetic now as I sat in my office at 6 a.m., building my case with the methodical precision of a watchmaker. Every email, every meeting note, every suspicious coincidence, it all went into the file. 3 months ago, Jason starts asking detailed questions about our donor database for the Harbor Foundation charity auction. Same week, Lila volunteers to coordinate the event. 2 months ago, Jason pushes for approval of a new marketing vendor, a boutique firm that happens to be owned by his college roommate. Price is 20% above market rate. 6 weeks ago, Jason's assistant books him a recurring lunch appointment every Tuesday. Same day, Lila starts her yoga class schedule. 1 month ago, our CFO mentions Jason's been asking about executive compensation packages, specifically mine. 3 weeks ago, Lila suggests we should have Jason and his girlfriend over for dinner. When I ask who he's dating, she gets vague. 2 weeks ago, Jason pushes for a revision to our vendor approval process, wanting to streamline smaller contracts under $50,000. His roommate's firm has been billing us in $49,000 increments. Every breadcrumb led back to the same conclusion. Jason Carr was playing games with company money and company wives. The only question was whether the board would care about the order. My computer chimed with an encrypted email from our head of security. The subject line read, "Vehicle logs, executive parking." Jason's Maserati had been in our garage every Tuesday afternoon for 2 months. According to building records, he'd been badging into the executive floor during lunch hours, using his investor access to meet with strategic partners. Except, according to his calendar, he was supposed to be at client lunches across town. I printed everything and called our general counsel. "Patricia, it's Ethan. I need an ethics review meeting scheduled for this afternoon. Full board if possible. What's the nature of the issue?" "Potential investor misconduct." "Possible breach of fiduciary standards." A pause. "How serious are we talking?" "Serious enough to trigger the conduct clauses. Have everyone review Section 12 of the Carr Agreement." "Jesus, Ethan. You sure about this?" Through my office window, I could see Jason's parking spot. Empty, but it wouldn't be for long. In a few hours, he'd swagger through our lobby like he owned the place. By sunset, he'd learn exactly how much of it he actually controlled. Never been more sure of anything in my life. The Meridian Gallery buzzed with the usual crowd of checkbook philanthropists and social climbers, all pretending their donations were about art instead of tax deductions. I'd arrived fashionably late, not late enough to miss the show, but late enough to make an entrance. Lila stood near the champagne station in a black dress that cost more than most people's rent, holding court with 3 Harbor Foundation board members. Jason orbited nearby, his hand possessively placed on the small of her back as he regaled some poor venture capitalist with tales of his latest acquisition. Neither of them saw me enter. They were too busy performing for their audience. Ethan Cole? I turned to find a woman in her late 30s studying me with intelligent brown eyes, tall, elegant, with the kind of understated style that whispered money rather than shouted it. "Samantha Rhodes," she said, extending her hand. "Sam. I run the contemporary wing here." "Ah, the curator. This is your show, then." "Guilty as charged." Her smile held an edge I couldn't quite read. "I've heard a lot about your company's partnership with the Harbor Foundation. Very generous contributions. We believe in supporting the arts. Even when the arts support questionable partners?" "Interesting." I studied her face, looking for tells. "I'm afraid I don't follow." She gestured subtly toward Jason and Lila. "Mr. Carr's been quite vocal about his plans to revolutionize charitable giving in the city. Big promises, bigger personality. You sound skeptical." "I sound experienced." She sipped her wine, never taking her eyes off mine. "I used to date him. 2 years, actually. Right up until I discovered his idea of portfolio diversification included my assistant." The pieces clicked. Jason's ex-girlfriend, working in the same social circles, probably privy to all kinds of interesting information about his business practices. "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't be. I'm not." She reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "But I am curious about something. How well do you really know your new investor?" Before I could answer, Jason's voice boomed across the gallery. "Ethan! There's the man of the hour!" He approached with Lila in tow, his smile wide enough to sell used cars. "Buddy, you should have told me you were coming tonight." "We could have coordinated." "Spontaneous decision," I said, noting how Lila avoided eye contact. "Beautiful venue, isn't it?" "Jason's been telling everyone about his expansion plans," Lila said, finally meeting my gaze. Her voice carried just enough challenge to let me know she was ready for a fight. "Expansion?" "New fund launching next quarter," Jason said, puffing up like a peacock. "Focusing on socially conscious investments." Art, education, environmental initiatives. The kind of work that makes a real difference. Sounds ambitious. Fortune favors the bold, right? Speaking of which, we should grab lunch next week. I've got some ideas about optimizing your operational efficiency. I felt Sam's eyes on me, watching the interaction like a chess master studying an opponent's strategy. I'll have my assistant check my calendar, I said. Jason clapped me on the shoulder. Outstanding. Lila, we should circulate. The auction starts in 20 minutes. As they walked away, I heard Lila laugh at something Jason whispered in her ear, the same laugh she used to save for my jokes. Charming couple, Sam said dryly. They seem happy. She seems expensive. He seems leveraged. I looked at her sharply. What makes you say that? Professional observation. I've seen enough art collectors go from Picasso to bankruptcy in 6 months. Jason's been selling pieces from his personal collection, quietly, through private dealers. When someone starts liquidating assets while talking about expansion, she let the implication hang in the air between us. You know a lot about his finances for an ex-girlfriend. You'd be amazed what people will tell curators when they're trying to establish provenance for a sale. She finished her wine and set the glass on a nearby table. The question is, Mr. Cole, what are you planning to do with what you know? I studied her face, weighing risks and opportunities. In the background, I could hear the auctioneer calling for attention, the crowd gathering around the main display. Why do you ask? Because Jason Carr destroyed something I cared about. And from the look on your face when you watch him with your wife, I'd say he's done the same to you. Her business card felt heavy in my pocket. On the small stage, Jason was helping introduce the evening's featured artist, his arm around Lila as cameras flashed. Hypothetically, I said, if someone wanted to verify concerns about an investor's financial stability, where might they look? Sam smiled, and for the first time all evening, it reached her eyes. Hypothetically, I'd start with his creditors. Bank records are private, but collection agencies are chatty, especially when they're worried about getting paid. The auction began, bidding paddles rising like flags of surrender. Jason won the first 3 lots, each purchase announced with theatrical flourish. Buying art with other people's money. Always easier to be generous when it's not your own wealth on the line. One more hypothetical, I said quietly. If someone discovered irregularities in an investor agreement, what would be the most elegant way to address them? Depends on your definition of elegant. Sam's eyes never left the auction. Some people prefer public humiliation. Others like quiet financial ruin. The truly sophisticated prefer both. Jason's paddle went up again. A $40,000 sculpture that would look perfect in his Harbor View penthouse. Thank you for the conversation, Miss Rhodes. Anytime, Mr. Cole and Ethan? She handed me a second business card, this one with a personal number handwritten on the back. Call me when you're ready to compare notes. As I walked toward the exit, I heard Jason's voice over the crowd. Going once, going twice. They sold to the gentleman in the front row. The gentleman who was spending company money on personal acquisitions while sleeping with company wives. Time to audit the books. Patricia Manning had been our general counsel for 12 years, which meant she'd seen enough corporate drama to fill a small library. When I walked into her office Monday morning with 2 boxes of documentation, she didn't even look surprised. How bad? She asked, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. Scale of 1 to 10, 15. I opened the first box and pulled out Jason's investor agreement, flagged with yellow sticky notes at every relevant section. The conduct writer we insisted on, he's violated it in at least 4 different ways. Patricia slipped on her reading glasses and started flipping pages. Walk me through it. Vendor kickbacks first. His college roommate owns Premier Marketing Solutions. They've billed us $240,000 over 6 months for strategic consultation. Market rate for similar services is maybe half that. That's not necessarily actionable unless we can prove personal benefit. Already ahead of you. Pulled out a stack of photographs. Jason's new Maserati. Lease documents show it's registered to Premier Marketing. They're paying his car payment with our contract fees. Patricia's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. Jesus. Gets better. Or worse, depending on your perspective. I opened the second box. Inappropriate personal relationships with key personnel. The rumors about him and Lila? Not rumors anymore. I handed her a hotel receipt I'd found in Jason's expense reports. 3 months ago, charged to the company as a client development meeting. Same night Lila told me she was at her sister's birthday party in Boston. Patricia studied the receipt. The Marriott downtown. Room service for two, champagne, late checkout. This is pretty damning, Ethan, but are you sure you want to? There's more. I cut her off. Bank records show Jason's been moving money between personal accounts and business holdings. Creative accounting to hide cash flow problems. How did you get bank records? I handed her Sam's business card. Source in the art world. Turns out Jason's been liquidating his collection to cover margin calls. His funds over-leveraged on 3 different positions. Patricia leaned back in her chair, processing. So he's essentially gambling with investor money to cover personal debts, taking kickbacks from vendors, and having an affair with your wife. That's the short version. And you want to trigger the conduct clause? I want him gone. Legally, cleanly, with full financial penalties. She was quiet for a long moment, studying the paperwork. The ethics hearing has to be unanimous. Full board vote? Are you prepared for them to ask why you didn't come forward sooner? I'm prepared to show them what happens when someone tries to steal from our company and our shareholders. What about Lila? The question I'd been dreading. What about her? Ethan, this is going to destroy her reputation, too. The affair, the connection to financial impropriety. Are you prepared for that level of collateral damage? I thought about the champagne dinner, the casual cruelty in her voice. Jason makes real money. You'll be fine. She made her choice, I said. Patricia gathered the documents into neat piles. I'll need 48 hours to review everything with outside counsel. If we're doing this, we need it bulletproof. How bulletproof? Enough to survive a wrongful termination lawsuit. Because that's exactly what Jason's going to hit us with. I stood to leave, then paused at her door. Patricia? When you schedule the hearing, make sure it's Wednesday afternoon. Any particular reason? That's when Jason has his standing lunch appointment with Lila. I want him to get the news while he's with her. She almost smiled. That's cold, even for you. No, I said. That's justice. As I walked back to my office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Clarity. For too long, I'd been reactive, absorbing hits and hoping things would improve. Now I was taking control. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam. Coffee tomorrow? I have more information about mutual friends. I typed back, absolutely, and Sam, thank you. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, thank me when it's over. Through my office window, I could see Jason's Maserati pulling into the executive garage. He emerged wearing a $1,000 suit and confidence that cost even more. In 48 hours, I was going to repossess both. Wednesday arrived with the kind of crisp autumn clarity that makes everything seem sharper, more defined. I'd been in the office since 6 a.m., rehearsing my presentation and checking every detail one final time. At 2 p.m., the boardroom filled with 8 directors, Patricia, and our outside ethics consultant. Jason arrived 10 minutes late, slightly breathless, probably rushing from his lunch with Lila. Sorry, gentlemen, he said, loosening his tie. Traffic was brutal. Board Chairman William Hughes cleared his throat. Jason, we've called this hearing to address some concerns that have been brought to our attention regarding potential violations of your investor agreement. The color drained from Jason's face. I'm sorry, violations? What are you talking about? Patricia stood and activated the presentation screen. Section 12 of your conduct rider specifically prohibits undisclosed conflicts of interest, inappropriate vendor relationships, and personal use of company resources. This is ridiculous. Who's making these accusations? Evidence was brought forward by our chief operating officer, Hughes said, nodding toward me. Jason's eyes found mine across the polished table. Ethan? What the hell is this about? I stood, my voice steady and professional. It's about Premier Marketing Solutions billing us $49,000 per month for services worth maybe $20,000. It's about your Maserati being leased through their account. It's about hotel receipts charged as business expenses for personal meetings. You've been investigating me? I've been protecting our shareholders. Patricia clicked to the next slide. Bank transfers, vendor payments, expense reports. Mr. Carr, can you explain these financial irregularities? Jason's hands shook slightly as he reached for his water glass. This is a witch hunt. You're upset about personal matters that have nothing to do with business. Personal matters? I pulled out the hotel receipt. The Marriott on Broad Street, September 15th. Charged a company card as client development meeting. Care to explain which client required champagne and late checkout? The room fell silent. Jason's lawyer whispered something in his ear, but he shook her off. This is about Lila, isn't it? His voice rose. You can't handle that she chose someone better. Mistake. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Personal drama was one thing, admitting to expense fraud was another. This is about fiduciary responsibility, Hughes said coldly. Mr. Carr, you signed an agreement with very specific behavioral standards. I've made this company money. You've stolen from this company, I replied. $240,000 in inflated vendor payments, $57,000 in personal expenses, plus whatever you've siphoned through Premier Marketing's other accounts. Patricia clicked to the final slide, a forensic accounting summary prepared by our external auditors. The numbers told the complete story. Jason had been treating our company like his personal ATM for months. The recommendation, Patricia said, is immediate termination for cause, forfeiture of all equity positions, and full clawback of invested capital. You can't do this. Jason stood, his chair scraping against hardwood. I'll sue you into the ground. With what money? I asked quietly. Your fund's overleveraged, your personal accounts are empty, and you've been selling art to cover margin calls. Your lawyer's probably already wondering when you'll pay her retainer. His face went ashen. How do you? Due diligence, Jason. Something you should have done before trying to rob us. The vote was unanimous. 8-0, with Jason abstaining for obvious reasons. Within an hour, building security was escorting him from the premises. His badge was deactivated, his parking privileges revoked, and his access to company systems terminated. As he walked past my office, carrying a cardboard box of personal items, our eyes met through the glass. He mouthed something that looked like, "This isn't over." I smiled and went back to my computer. At 6 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You destroyed everything. Hope you're happy. Lila, probably watching Jason pack his Harbor View penthouse. I deleted the message without responding. Sam called 20 minutes later. I saw the news already hit the trade papers. Investor ousted for ethics violations. Very tactfully worded. Patricia's good with public relations. How are you feeling? Honestly, empty. Relieved, but empty. Like I just performed surgery on myself. The hardest part's over. Is it? Well, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. That depends on whether you're finished. I looked out my office window at the city lights beginning to twinkle. In the early evening. Somewhere out there, Lila was probably consoling Jason, promising him this was temporary, that they'd figure something out. She was wrong. This was permanent, and I was just getting started. The Harbor Foundation Gala was Lila's Super Bowl, her chance to prove she belonged in the city's social stratosphere. 300 guests, silent auction, keynote address by the mayor. She'd been planning it for 6 months, back when she thought she'd be arriving on Jason's arm as the new power couple in town. Instead, she showed up alone in a dress that probably cost more than Jason's remaining liquid assets. I arrived with Sam, who looked elegant in navy blue and confidence. We made quite a pair. The betrayed husband and his mysterious new companion, both of us carrying ourselves like we owned the room. Ethan! Margaret Ashford, the foundation's president, practically floated over to us. We can't thank you enough for stepping up as keynote sponsor. When Jason had to withdraw, we were devastated. But your generosity saved the evening. Happy to help, I said, accepting her air kisses with practiced grace. Across the ballroom, Lila was talking animatedly with 3 board members, her smile bright enough to power the chandelier. She hadn't seen me yet, but I could tell from her posture she knew I was here. Who's your lovely companion? Margaret asked, extending her hand to Sam. Samantha Rhodes, curator at the Meridian Gallery. We're exploring some collaborative opportunities. How wonderful. Art and business, such a perfect partnership. After Margaret moved on, Sam leaned closer. Collaborative opportunities? We are. I'm thinking of endowing a contemporary art wing. With what money? Jason's clawback funds. Seem poetic. She laughed, the sound drawing glances from nearby tables. You're diabolical. I prefer methodical. The cocktail hour stretched on with the usual charity gala choreography. Checkbook philanthropy disguised as social concern. everyone performing their generosity for the cameras. I worked the room systematically, accepting congratulations from business associates and expressing appropriate concern for Jason's unfortunate situation. At 8 p.m., Margaret took the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. We have a wonderful evening planned, beginning with remarks from our generous keynote sponsor, Ethan Cole. I walked to the stage, conscious of every eye in the room. In the front row, Lila sat rigid, her champagne untouched. Good evening, I began, my voice carrying easily across the ballroom. When I first got involved with the Harbor Foundation, it was because I believed in their mission of supporting emerging artists and cultural education. Polite applause. Standard opening. But recently, I've learned something important about foundations. They're only as strong as the ethics of the people who support them. The applause was a little more uncertain now. That's why, tonight, I'm pleased to announce a new partnership between our company and the Meridian Gallery. I gestured to Sam. Together, we're establishing the Emerging Artists Initiative, a $1 million endowment specifically designed to support local talent. Now the applause was enthusiastic. Nothing motivated charity audiences like specific dollar amounts. The funding comes from recovered assets, money that was misallocated, but has now been returned to its proper purpose. I saw Lila's face go pale. She knew exactly which assets I was talking about. Art has always been about truth, I continued. About seeing clearly, without illusion or pretense. In that spirit, I want to thank everyone who helped identify and eliminate the mismanagement that threatened our shared mission. Across the room, I spotted Jason's former business partner looking distinctly uncomfortable. The man had probably been wondering when the audit would reach his own dealings. To art, to truth, and to making sure both endure, the applause was thunderous. As I walked back to my table, I passed Lila's seat. She was staring straight ahead, her knuckles white around her champagne flute. Masterful, Sam whispered as I sat down. You just publicly branded them both without mentioning a single name. The dinner continued with the usual succession of speeches and award presentations. I smiled, applauded, and made small talk, while watching Lila slowly realize that her social foundation was crumbling. By dessert, 3 different board members had approached our table to express interest in the new gallery partnership. 2 major donors asked about investment opportunities in art acquisition. The mayor's wife invited Sam and me to a private reception next month. Meanwhile, Lila sat increasingly isolated as former friends found excuses to visit other tables. At 10 p.m., as the evening wound down, she finally approached me near the coat check. Ethan. Her voice was carefully controlled. Quite a speech tonight. Thank you. The Emerging Artists Initiative. How generous. The word dripped with acid. I thought so. Is this how it's going to be? You destroying everything I worked for? I studied her face, the same face I'd loved for 8 years, now twisted with anger and desperation. You worked for this? I asked quietly. Which part? The charity boards you bought your way onto with my money, the social connections you made through my business relationships, the foundation position you got because I introduced you to Margaret Ashford. Her mask slipped. I built those relationships myself. You used them as currency to trade up to Jason. Now you're discovering what happens when the bank calls in the loan. You're enjoying this. I'm finishing this. She looked around the emptying ballroom, probably calculating how many bridges were burning behind her. What do you want, Ethan? Money? The house? Just tell me what it'll take to stop this. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I want the truth to matter again, I said. I want people to face consequences for their choices. And I want you to understand that actions have costs. Sam appeared at my elbow, our coats draped over her arm. Ready? As we walked toward the exit, I heard Lila call after us. This isn't over. I didn't turn around. It was over. She just didn't realize it yet. Outside, the October air was crisp with possibility. Sam and I walked to the harbor promenade, the city lights reflecting off the water like scattered diamonds. That was the hard part, she said. I thought about Jason, probably packing boxes in his empty penthouse. About Lila, standing alone in that ballroom, finally understanding that her golden ladder had been built from borrowed money and borrowed time. No, I said, taking Sam's hand. That was the easy part. The real work was just beginning. 3 weeks later, Lila's carefully constructed social empire began collapsing with the systematic precision of a controlled demolition. It started with the Harbor Foundation board meeting. Margaret Ashford called me personally to deliver the news. "I'm afraid we've had to ask Lila to step down from her position," she said, her voice carrying the kind of regret reserved for necessary amputations. "The association with the car situation has created complications. I understand completely. She's not happy about it. Made quite a scene, actually. Accused us of being influenced by personal vendettas. Through my office window, I could see Jason's former parking space, now occupied by our new head of investor relations. Life moved on quickly in the corporate world. "I'm sure you made the right decision," I told Margaret. "We did. The foundation can't afford to be associated with financial impropriety, even tangentially." After she hung up, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Lila's charity work had been her entry point to high society, her proof that she was more than just a corporate wife. Without it, she was just another divorced woman with expensive taste and diminishing options. Sam called an hour later. "I heard about the foundation. Your handiwork?" "Market forces," I said. "People protect their reputations." "Speaking of reputations, have you seen the Business Journal today?" I hadn't. She texted me a link to an article titled "When Investors Go Bad, a Case Study in Due Diligence." The piece didn't mention Jason by name, but it didn't need to. Anyone in the financial community would recognize the details. The over-leveraged positions, the personal expenses disguised as business costs, the romantic entanglement with key personnel. It was a masterclass in professional assassination. Death by 1,000 cuts, each one precisely placed and legally defensible. "Brutal," I said, when Sam called back, "but fair. He did everything they're describing. Still, his career is over." "Good. Maybe the next guy will read the fine print before trying to steal from his partners." That afternoon brought more dominoes falling. Our CFO stopped by my office with an update on the clawback proceedings. "Jason's lawyer called," he said. "They want to negotiate a settlement." "How much?" "They're offering to return 60% of the misappropriated funds in exchange for dropping the criminal referral." I leaned back in my chair, considering. What does Patricia recommend? Take the deal. Getting back $300,000 guaranteed is better than spending 2 years in litigation for maybe $500,000. And the criminal charges? District attorney says they'll proceed regardless. The forged client letter they found during discovery pretty much guarantees fraud charges. So Jason was facing bankruptcy and prison time. Lila was losing her social standing and charitable positions. Their relationship was probably falling apart under the pressure. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt oddly hollow. That evening, I met Sam for dinner at a quiet restaurant downtown. She'd chosen well. Intimate lighting, discreet service, the kind of place where serious people had serious conversations. "You're having second thoughts," she said after we ordered. "Am I that obvious?" "Your victory feels incomplete." I sipped my wine thinking. When I started this, I wanted justice, clean, legal, proportional. But watching it play out, you're realizing revenge is different from justice. Something like that. She reached across the table and touched my hand. "Ethan, what Jason did wasn't just about money. He stole your trust, your marriage, your company's integrity. Some things can't be made whole with apologies." "I know that. Intellectually. But emotionally, you're wondering if you've become the kind of person you used to judge." That was exactly it. For months, I'd been operating like a chess master, thinking 12 moves ahead, manipulating outcomes with surgical precision. It was effective, but it wasn't who I used to be. "Maybe," I said. Sam was quiet for a moment, studying my face. "Can I tell you something about my breakup with Jason?" "Of course." "When I found out about the affair, my first instinct was to destroy him, publicly, financially, personally. I wanted him to suffer the way I was suffering. But you didn't. I tried to. Spent weeks planning how to expose him, ruin his reputation, cost him money. But every scheme I came up with required me to become someone I didn't like. So you walked away. I chose dignity over revenge, and for 2 years I regretted it. Watched him move on, upgrade to younger girlfriends, build his wealth while I rebuilt my self-respect. Until he targeted my wife. Until I realized that some people don't learn from consequences, they learn from destruction. Jason needed to be stopped, not taught. And sometimes that requires someone willing to do the necessary work. Her hand tightened on mine. You didn't become a worse person, Ethan. You became a more effective one. Our food arrived, but neither of us had much appetite. Outside, the city hummed with its usual evening energy. People heading home from work, couples meeting for drinks, life continuing its relentless forward motion. There's something else, Sam said quietly. Well, something I haven't told you about Jason. I looked up from my untouched salmon. The art collection he's been selling, some of those pieces were mine. Gifts I gave him during our relationship. He's been liquidating them without telling me. That's theft. It's also perfectly legal. I gave them as gifts, so technically they're his property, but morally, she shrugged. It's just another example of who he really is. I'm sorry. Don't be. It helped me understand that some people view relationships as asset acquisition opportunities. Everything's transactional. Love, loyalty, even generosity. I thought about Lila's champagne smile, the casual way she discarded 8 years of marriage for a better financial prospect. You think that's what this was for her? Asset acquisition? I think Lila saw Jason as an upgrade and didn't do her due diligence on the product. Despite everything, I almost smiled. That's cold, but accurate. And now she's learning what happens when you buy without reading the warranty. We finished dinner mostly in silence, both lost in our own thoughts. As Sam and I walked back to our cars, she stopped suddenly. Ethan, there's something you should know about what's coming next. What do you mean? Jason's desperate. His lawyer filed the wrongful termination suit this afternoon, but more importantly, he's been making calls. Trying to dig up dirt on you, on the company, on anyone who might have helped with his investigation. My blood went cold. What kind of dirt? The kind that doesn't exist, so he's trying to create it. Bribery allegations, claims that you manipulated evidence, accusations that our relationship is some kind of conspiracy. Can he make any of that stick? Not if we're careful. But desperate people do stupid things, and stupid things can sometimes look convincing to juries. I felt the first flutter of real concern. What do you recommend? We need to be completely transparent about everything. No secret meetings, no questionable communications, nothing that could be misconstrued as improper. Are you saying we shouldn't see each other? She stepped closer, her hand finding mine in the space between streetlights. I'm saying we should see each other very publicly, very openly, and with complete confidence that we have nothing to hide. Because we don't. Because we don't. But as I drove home that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the war was entering a new phase, one where the rules might not protect me as much as I'd hoped. Jason's wrongful termination lawsuit landed on Patricia's desk like a guided missile, 47 pages of accusations, innuendo, and barely contained rage. He's claiming conspiracy, breach of contract, defamation, and emotional distress, she said, sliding the document across her desk. His lawyer's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. I scanned the allegations, feeling my blood pressure rise with each paragraph. According to Jason's version of events, I was a vindictive husband who'd fabricated evidence, manipulated board members, and conspired with his ex-girlfriend to destroy his career out of jealousy. Half of this is provably false, I said. Half isn't good enough. We need all of it to be false. What's our exposure? Patricia pulled out a legal pad covered in notes. Worst case scenario? If a jury believes his version and awards maximum damages, we're looking at $15 million, plus legal costs. And best case? We crush him completely, recover our attorney fees, and he ends up owing us money. I like the second option better. So do I. But it's going to require perfect execution. Every document, every witness statement, every timeline has to be bulletproof. Over the next week, Patricia and her team reconstructed the entire Jason investigation with forensic precision. Bank records, expense reports, email trails, security footage, everything organized into a narrative so airtight it could survive orbital re-entry. Meanwhile, Jason's legal team was conducting their own investigation, interviewing former employees, requesting company documents, and generally making nuisances of themselves within the bounds of legal discovery. On Thursday, they subpoenaed Sam. It's intimidation, she said when she called me. They want to shake us up, make us worry about what secrets might come out. Are you worried? About the deposition? No. About what Jason might do if he gets more desperate? Maybe. That night, someone broke into Sam's gallery. Nothing was stolen, but several pieces were damaged and the security system had been professionally disabled. The police treated it as random vandalism, but Sam and I both knew better. We need to escalate this, I told Patricia the next morning. Escalate how? Jason's crossed a line, breaking and entering, property destruction, witness intimidation. That's not civil litigation anymore. Patricia was quiet for a moment. You're sure it was him? Who else would it be? Can you prove it? That was the problem. Jason was too smart to leave fingerprints, too careful to be caught on camera. But the timing was too convenient to be coincidental. What if we can make him prove it wasn't him? I asked. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Explain. His deposition is next week. We ask him directly about the break-in, about any contact with private investigators, about whether he's hired anyone to conduct surveillance or intimidation. If he lies under oath, then he's committed perjury. And if he tells the truth, he's admitting to obstruction of justice. That's risky. If we're wrong about his involvement, we look paranoid. And if we're right, we destroy his credibility permanently. Patricia made a note. I'll add the questions to our deposition outline. That weekend, Sam moved in with me temporarily. We told ourselves it was for security reasons, but honestly, we both needed the company. The lawsuit had created a strange intimacy between us. The shared stress of being under attack, the mutual dependence of people in a foxhole together. Are you having second thoughts? She asked Saturday morning as we read the newspaper over coffee. About what? About all of this. The investigation, the lawsuit, us. I looked at her across my kitchen table, hair slightly messed from sleep, wearing one of my old Harvard t-shirts, completely beautiful in the morning light. No second thoughts, I said. But I'm wondering what happens when this is all over. What do you mean? Right now, we're united by a common enemy. When Jason's gone, when the lawsuit's resolved, when everything goes back to normal. What then? She reached across the table and took my hand. Then we find out if this was just adrenaline or something more. And if it's something more, then we build something together that's stronger than what either of us lost. Monday morning brought Jason's deposition. 6 hours of legal combat, disguised as a formal interview. He arrived wearing his best suit and most confident smile, but I could see the strain around his eyes. Patricia was methodical, walking him through every expense report, every vendor payment, every questionable decision. Jason's answers grew more defensive as the day wore on. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Mr. Carr, do you know anything about a break-in at the Meridian Gallery last Thursday night? His lawyer objected immediately. Relevance? It goes to the witness's credibility and potential obstruction of justice. The court reporter's fingers never stopped moving. Jason shifted in his seat. I don't know anything about any break-in, he said. Have you hired any private investigators in connection with this lawsuit? No. Have you or anyone acting on your behalf attempted to intimidate witnesses? Absolutely not. Have you had any contact with Miss A. Rhodes outside of formal legal proceedings? A pause. Just a heartbeat. But I caught it. No. Patricia nodded calmly. Thank you. No further questions? After Jason and his lawyer left, I stayed behind with Patricia. How did we do? I asked. Better than expected. He lied at least 3 times that I could document, probably more that I couldn't. About the break-in? Among other things. I'll have the private investigators report on his activities next week. If Jason's been conducting surveillance or making contact attempts, we'll have proof. As I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Optimism. Jason was making mistakes, overplaying his hand, giving us ammunition for our counterattack. But optimism, I was about to learn, could be a dangerous thing. The envelope arrived at my office on a Tuesday, hand-delivered by courier with no return address. Inside were photographs, grainy telephoto shots of Sam and me leaving restaurants, walking together, entering my building. The note was typed on plain paper. Withdraw the criminal charges or these go public with a very interesting story about corporate executives and personal vendettas. I called Patricia immediately. Blackmail, she said after reviewing the package. Amateur hour, but still illegal. Can we trace it? The courier service requires cash payment and fake names. Dead end. I studied the photographs again. They were invasive, but not scandalous. Two adults having dinner, walking in public, behaving completely appropriately. What's the threat exactly? I asked. That I'm dating someone after my wife left me for another man? The threat is context. Jason's narrative is that you fabricated evidence to destroy him out of jealousy. If he can paint your relationship with Sam as part of some conspiracy, a jury might believe we're both motivated by revenge instead of justice. Exactly. I felt the familiar cold anger that had become my constant companion over the past few months. Jason wasn't just attacking me anymore. He was targeting Sam, trying to make her collateral damage in his desperate fight for survival. That crossed a line. What do you need me to do? I asked Patricia. Nothing yet. Let me handle the legal response. You focus on staying clean and keeping Sam safe. But staying clean wasn't enough anymore. Jason had escalated to personal threats and witness intimidation. The time for defensive measures was over. That evening, I called Sam with a proposal. I want to hold a press conference, I said. About what? About everything. Jason's theft, the lawsuit, the intimidation tactics. Get everything on the record publicly before he can spin it. That's risky. Once you go public, there's no taking it back. Good. I'm tired of playing defense. We met at my office that night to plan the press conference with Patricia and our public relations consultant. The strategy was simple. Tell the complete truth before Jason could tell his version of it. We announced the Emerging Artists Initiative expansion, the PR consultant explained. Position you as someone who turned a negative situation into a positive community investment. Then we addressed the lawsuit as an unfortunate but expected response from someone facing criminal charges. What about the photographs? We get ahead of them. Acknowledge your relationship openly. Explain the timeline. Emphasize that it began after your separation and has nothing to do with the business investigation. Patricia nodded. Transparency diffuses blackmail. If there's nothing to hide, there's nothing to threaten. The press conference was scheduled for Thursday morning. Wednesday night, Jason made his final desperate play. He called me directly. Ethan, it's Jason. Don't hang up. I almost did, but curiosity won. What do you want? I want to make a deal. I'm listening. I'll drop the lawsuit, admit to the expense violations, and leave town quietly. All I need in exchange is your agreement to drop the criminal charges and a recommendation letter for my next position. That's it? That's it. Clean slate for everyone. I was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Jason sounded exhausted, defeated. This could be a way to end everything without more damage, more publicity, more stress for everyone involved. What about Lila? I asked. What about her? Where does she fit in your fresh start? A longer pause. She doesn't. That's over. So Lila had finally learned the cost of betting on a losing horse. I need to think about it, I said. You have 12 hours. After that, I release everything I have. He hung up. I sat in my dark office for an hour weighing options. The deal would end the immediate threat, but it would also let Jason escape the consequences of his actions. He'd victimized other people before me and would probably victimize others after. Some people don't learn from consequences. They learn from destruction. Sam's words echoed in my head as I made my decision. I called Patricia. The press conference is still on, I told her. And Patricia? Add a section about witness intimidation and blackmail attempts. It's time to finish this. Thursday morning, I stood behind a podium in the Meridian Gallery, flanked by Sam and Patricia, facing a room full of reporters and cameras. 6 months ago, our company discovered that an investor had been stealing from us, I began. Today, I want to tell you how we responded, why it matters, and what it means for the future of ethical business practices. For 20 minutes, I laid out the complete story. Jason's thefts, the investigation, the lawsuit, the intimidation, tactics. Every fact, every document, every piece of evidence. When I finished, the questions came fast and sharp. Mr. Cole, how do you respond to allegations that this is personal revenge? With facts. Every action we took was legal, documented, and approved by our board. Personal feelings don't change mathematical realities. What about your relationship with Miss Rhodes? Sam stepped forward. Mr. Cole and I began dating 3 months after his wife left him for Mr. Carr. Our relationship has nothing to do with the business investigation, which was already complete when we met. Mr. Carr claims you fabricated evidence. Patricia handled that one. Mr. Carr is welcome to prove that allegation in court. We welcome the scrutiny. By noon, the story was everywhere. Business journals, local news, social media. The narrative was exactly what we'd hoped for. Ethical executives exposing fraud, not vengeful ex-husbands manufacturing scandals. Jason's lawyer called Patricia that afternoon. My client would like to withdraw his lawsuit and negotiate a settlement, he said. Too late, Patricia replied. We're done negotiating. That evening, federal marshals arrested Jason at his apartment on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, and witness intimidation. The blackmail photographs had been traced to a private investigator he'd hired, who'd rolled over immediately when faced with his own criminal charges. I watched the arrest on the evening news from Sam's gallery, surrounded by the art that had brought us together. How do you feel? She asked. Like I can breathe again. Any regrets? I thought about it honestly. About Jason? No? About what I became in the process, maybe. What do you mean? I used to believe that good people could win by being good, that integrity was its own strength. And now, I think integrity is something you have to fight for. Sometimes with methods that aren't particularly noble. Sam nodded thoughtfully. Maybe that's the point. Maybe protecting good things requires being willing to do hard things. Outside, the city lights reflected off the harbor like scattered promises. Somewhere out there, Lila was probably packing boxes, preparing to start over without the safety net she'd abandoned. Jason was sitting in a federal detention center, finally facing the consequences he'd spent months trying to avoid. And I was standing next to a woman who understood that sometimes love means being willing to fight for it. What happens now? I asked. Now we find out what we can build together. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to finding out. Lila showed up at my office 3 weeks later, looking like a refugee from her own life. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup, replaced by jeans, a simple sweater, and the kind of exhaustion that no amount of sleep could fix. Your assistant said you'd see me, she said, standing uncertainly in my doorway. Close the door. She sat across from my desk, fidgeting with her wedding ring, the same ring she'd thrown at me during one of our final arguments. Jason's pleading guilty, she said without preamble. I heard 10 years, with possibility of parole in 6 if he cooperates with the federal investigation. I nodded but didn't respond. She was here for a reason, and I wanted to hear what it was. I need you to know something, she continued, about why I left. Lila, please, let me say this. I leaned back in my chair and waited. I didn't leave because of Jason's money, not really. Then why? Because you were, comfortable. We were comfortable. 8 years of the same routines, the same conversations, the same predictable life. She looked out my window at the city skyline. Jason represented change, adventure. The possibility that there was more to life than what we had. Was there? She laughed bitterly. God, no. He was a fraud in every sense of the word. Not just financially, emotionally, personally, completely fake. I'm sorry. Are you? Really? The question hung in the air between us. Was I sorry that her gamble on excitement had cost her everything? That her pursuit of adventure had led to public humiliation and social exile? I'm sorry you got hurt, I said finally. I'm not sorry you faced consequences. She nodded as if she'd expected that answer. I lost everything, Ethan. The foundation position, the charity boards, most of my friends. The only reason I'm not completely broke is because you didn't go after me in the divorce. That was true. I could have made her life much more difficult financially, but I'd chosen not to. Some might call it weakness. I called it basic decency. Well, what do you want from me, Lila? Forgiveness, maybe, or at least understanding. I understand perfectly. You saw something you thought was better and you took it. That's human nature, but you can't forgive it. I considered the question seriously. Could I forgive her for 8 years of marriage discarded like last season's fashion? For the casual cruelty of that champagne dinner? For choosing excitement over loyalty? I can forgive the leaving, I said. I can't forgive the way you did it. She was quiet for a long moment. For what it's worth, I know I handled it badly. Badly is underselling it. I was cruel. deliberately cruel. I wanted you to hate me so I wouldn't have to feel guilty about what I was doing. Did it work? For a while, but watching Jason fall apart, seeing what he really was underneath all that charm, it made me realize what I'd thrown away. There it was. The real reason for her visit, not forgiveness, but the hope that maybe, possibly, there was a way back. Lila, I said gently, what we had is gone. It died the night you chose him over 8 years of us. I know, her voice was small. I just needed to say I'm sorry, and that I hope you're happy. I am. With her? The curator? With my choices. With the life I'm building. With someone who sees value in loyalty. She flinched at that last part, but didn't argue. I should go, she said, standing. I'm moving back to Chicago. My sister found me a job with her marketing firm. That's probably smart. Fresh start. Yeah, fresh start. She paused at my door. Ethan, you were never as comfortable as I thought you were. You were stable. I was too stupid to know the difference. After she left, I sat in my office thinking about roads not taken, about the strange mathematics of love and loss. Lila had gambled our marriage on the possibility of something better and lost everything. I'd gambled on the power of truth and consequences and won more than I'd expected. The irony wasn't lost on me. That evening, I met Sam for dinner at the same restaurant where Lila had ended our marriage. Different table, different wine, different future. Closure, Sam said when I told her about Lila's visit. Something like that. How do you feel? Sad, mostly. Not for what I lost, but for what she lost. She had something real and traded it for something that looked shinier. People make choices. People make mistakes. The question is whether they learn from them. Sam reached across the table and took my hand. Do you think she learned? Maybe. But too late to matter. We ate in comfortable silence, watching the city move around us through the restaurant's windows. After dinner, we walked to the harbor promenade, where I'd first realized I was going to destroy Jason Carr. Any regrets? Sam asked, echoing her question from weeks earlier. This time, my answer was different. No, I said. No regrets at all. About the methods you used? About protecting what mattered to me, about refusing to be a victim, about choosing someone who fights for what we have instead of someone who abandons it for something that looks better. She smiled. That's quite a declaration, Mr. Cole. It's quite a relationship, miss. Roads. Behind us, the city hummed with its usual energy. Somewhere out there, Jason was learning to live with the consequences of his choices. Lila was starting over with the wisdom that comes from losing everything. And I was standing next to someone who understood that the best things in life are worth fighting for. 6 months later, the Emerging Artists Initiative had become everything Sam and I had hoped for. The converted warehouse space buzzed with creative energy. Painters, sculptors, and digital artists working side by side, supported by grants funded entirely by Jason's forfeited assets. Poetic justice, Sam called it, watching a young sculptor put finishing touches on a piece that would be displayed in the city's central plaza. I preferred practical recycling, but the effect was the same. The lawsuit had been resolved in our favor, with Jason's lawyers paying our court costs as part of his plea agreement. The criminal case had uncovered a network of financial improprieties that went far beyond our company. Phantom investments, inflated valuations, outright theft from multiple clients. Jason wouldn't be eligible for parole for 8 years. Any word from Lila? Sam asked as we reviewed applications for the next round of artist grants. Christmas card from Chicago. She's engaged to her sister's business partner. How do you feel about that? Happy for her. Everyone deserves a second chance to get it right. And I meant it. Lila's betrayal had hurt, but it had also freed me to find something better. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. Speaking of second chances, Sam said, pulling a small velvet box from her purse. My heart stopped. Samantha Rhodes, I said carefully. What are you doing? Proposing, she said with a grin. Unless you object to modern women taking initiative. I stared at the ring. Elegant, understated, perfect. This is highly irregular. So was everything else about our relationship. Corporate investigation, federal prosecution, public vindication. Why should the proposal be conventional? I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Yes, I said. Yes, what? Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I want to build something permanent with you. Yes to everything we could become together. She slipped the ring onto my finger, a simple platinum band that somehow felt like armor and freedom at the same time. There's one condition, she said. Name it. No more revenge plots. I want our marriage built on love, not mutual enemy destruction. I laughed. Deal, though I reserve the right to protect what's ours if anyone threatens it. Agreed. But let's hope it doesn't come to that. We sealed the agreement with a kiss that tasted like new beginnings and earned victories. That evening, we celebrated at the same wine bar where we'd planned Jason's downfall. The irony felt appropriate, transforming a place of strategic warfare into a venue for celebration. To second acts, Sam said, raising her glass. To people who fight for what matters. To justice served at the perfect temperature. We drank, and I marveled at how completely my life had changed. 18 months ago, I'd been a comfortable husband with a predictable future. Tonight, I was a man who'd learned that comfort was overrated, that some things were worth fighting for, and that the best relationships were built by people willing to protect them. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Saw the engagement announcement in the business journal. Congratulations, well-deserved happiness. Other messages followed. Colleagues, board members, even Margaret Ashford from the Harbor Foundation. Everyone celebrating our news. Everyone treating it as the natural conclusion to an unnatural story. Any regrets now? Sam asked as we walked home through streets that had witnessed our entire relationship. Only one. She stopped walking. What? I regret that it took losing everything to realize what I actually wanted, which is, I looked at her standing under a streetlight, beautiful and brilliant and completely real. Someone who sees the world clearly. Someone who fights for justice instead of just hoping for it. Someone who understands that love isn't about finding comfort. It's about finding someone worth being uncomfortable with. That's quite a romantic declaration for a reformed CFO. I've learned a lot about risk assessment lately. And what's your assessment of this particular risk? I pulled her closer, feeling the weight of the ring on my finger and the lightness of a future filled with possibilities. Best investment I've ever made. As we continued walking, I thought about Jason in his federal prison, probably still believing he was the victim of an elaborate conspiracy. About Lila in Chicago, hopefully building something real with someone who valued loyalty over excitement. About the strange justice of consequences catching up with people who thought they could escape them forever. Most of all, I thought about Sam beside me, her hand in mine, both of us moving toward a future we'd fought to create. Sometimes the best revenge is building something better than what you lost. Sometimes justice looks like two people who refuse to be victims finding each other and deciding to be victorious instead. Sometimes the golden cage isn't about trapping people. It's about creating something so valuable that only the wisest choose to stay inside. The federal courthouse steps were slick with October rain as I walked out after testifying in Jason's final appeal hearing. His lawyers had made one last desperate attempt to overturn his conviction, claiming prosecutorial misconduct and tainted evidence. It had taken the appeals court exactly 47 minutes to deny the motion. Sam was waiting in the lobby, reading a magazine and looking completely relaxed despite the circumstances. "How did it go?" she asked. "Justice served. Again." Good. I was getting tired of reliving our origin story every 6 months. We walked out into the gray afternoon, both of us ready to close this chapter permanently. Jason would serve his full sentence now. No more appeals, no more legal maneuvering, no more attempts to rewrite history. Lunch, Sam suggested. I know a place. The place turned out to be the same upscale restaurant where Lila had ended our marriage 2 years earlier. I paused at the entrance, memories flooding back. You sure about this? Trust me. The hostess led us to a corner table with a view of the harbor. As we settled in, I realized Sam had requested the exact table where I'd received my death sentence with champagne and silk-wrapped cruelty. This is either very romantic or very twisted, I said. Why not both? Our waiter approached, a young man with nervous energy and careful diction. Good afternoon. Can I start you with something to drink? Champagne, Sam said immediately. Your best bottle. While we waited for the wine, I studied the restaurant with new eyes. 2 years ago, this place had represented the end of everything I'd built. Today, it felt like a monument to new beginnings. You know what I realized? Sam said, following my gaze around the dining room. What's that? Lila did you a favor? How do you figure? She showed you what you were settling for. A marriage based on comfort instead of passion, routine instead of purpose, convenience instead of choice. The champagne arrived with appropriate ceremony. Sam raised her glass. To Lila, she said with a perfectly straight face. I stared at her. Are you insane? To Lila, who was selfish enough to leave, stupid enough to choose Jason, and honest enough to show you exactly who she really was before you wasted any more years on someone who didn't deserve them. I had to admit, there was a certain logic to it. To Lila, I said, raising my own glass, who taught me the difference between someone who loves what I can provide and someone who loves what I actually am. We drank, and I felt the last knot of resentment finally dissolve. You know what the best part is? Sam continued. Tell me. She's probably perfectly happy with her marketing executive in Chicago. Conventional job, conventional marriage, conventional life. Everything she thought she wanted. And Jason's in federal prison, thinking about all the ways he could have played it differently, while we're building something neither of them could have imagined. Through the restaurant's windows, I could see the harbor where we'd walked after every major victory in our war against Jason. The same water that had reflected our plans for justice now reflected our plans for the future. The gallery's expansion is approved, Sam said, changing the subject. City Council voted unanimously. We'll have 3 times the space, plus the education center, funded entirely by recovered fraud assets. The best kind of money, previously stolen, now doing good. Our food arrived, but neither of us was particularly focused on eating. The restaurant held too many memories, too many echoes of the people we used to be. Can I tell you something? I said. Always. Sometimes I miss the fight. Sam looked up from her salmon. What do you mean? The investigation, the strategy, the careful planning. There was something clarifying about having a clear enemy and righteous cause. You miss the adrenaline. Maybe. Or maybe I miss feeling completely certain about right and wrong. Life's more complicated when you're not at war. Exactly. I set down my fork. When we were fighting Jason, every decision was simple. Anything that hurt him was good. Anything that helped him was bad. Now you have to figure out what you actually want instead of just knowing what you're against. That was it, exactly. For months, my entire identity had been built around destroying Jason Carr and everything he represented. With that mission complete, I sometimes felt oddly untethered. Do you know what you want? Sam asked gently. I looked across the table at her, intelligent, beautiful, completely real in ways that Lila had never been. The woman who'd helped me discover that justice wasn't just about punishment, but about protecting what mattered. I want to build something that lasts, I said. Something that can't be stolen or manipulated or destroyed by people who think everything's for sale, such as a marriage based on mutual respect instead of mutual convenience, a business that operates with actual integrity instead of just legal compliance, a life that means something beyond just accumulating comfort. Sam smiled. Those are good goals. Think they're achievable? With the right partner? Absolutely. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Former investment advisor Jason Carr dies in federal prison. I showed Sam the screen. She read it without expression. Heart attack, she said finally. Apparently happened during exercise period. I should have felt something. Satisfaction, closure, maybe even sympathy. Instead, I felt nothing at all. That's it then, I said. The end of the story. No, Sam said, reaching across the table to take my hand. That's the end of his story. Ours is just beginning. She was right. Jason Carr had been a chapter in our lives, not the entire book. His death didn't change what he'd done or what we'd built in response to it, but it did close the door on any possibility of further revenge or justice. We paid the check and walked out into the October afternoon. The rain had stopped, and afternoon sunlight was breaking through the clouds, turning the wet pavement into mirrors. Where to now? Sam asked. Home, I said. To start working on everything that comes after justice. As we walked away from the restaurant, I thought about the strange mathematics of revenge and redemption. Jason was dead, Lila was remarried, and I was standing next to someone who'd helped me discover that the best response to betrayal wasn't destruction. It was creation. Sometimes the golden cage isn't about trapping your enemies. Sometimes it's about building something so valuable, so well protected, and so worth defending that only the people who truly understand its worth get to stay inside. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you find someone who not only wants to stay, but is willing to help you build the locks.